what's the importance of science in the society could be the topic for today. I'm sure all of us who pursue science, we always think that science is very important and most important in life. And because it's our own career, maybe we are always biased. So can we have an unbiased opinion about the importance of science to the society? And again, it's some kind of a paradox here. People who are all in this room, including me, we are all pursuing science as career and professionals, and we are also asking ourselves, can we be outside and be impartial judges of what should be the importance of science in the society, or what should be the level of importance one should give to science in the society. The reason we can do that job, although it's a sort of paradoxical we thought, is our job profession itself is like that. Unlike many other professions, the science we pursue is with certain objectivity, right? Without objectivity, you cannot pursue science. Very first thing we do is we make an hypothesis and we validate an hypothesis. And we make an hypothesis based on some prior knowledge and based on some analytical extension of the prior knowledge, and say that this could be the speculated reality of the world, and that reality we want to validate and check with the help of some experiments. The fact that we want to do an experiment to validate a hypothesis means that we ourselves are not biased about our hypothesis. That means that we are not believing in our hypothesis. We already started, in a way, questioning ourselves. Because scientists question ourselves, it's not that difficult to question our profession, to question our very existence in the society, why science should be there in the society, or why a state should fund research, right? Now, the question of state funding research or corporate funding research is all very, very sort of superficial discussion. I think state funding research is the most important thing. Just now, only yesterday, Bill Gates has written a very interesting, very important article. Bill Gates has been funding research, I'm sure all of you, both through his foundation. He's funding research particularly in the area of infectious diseases and other neglected diseases. And in his own company, as an entrepreneur, he's been funding research left and right in the area of computer science, theoretical computer science, and also in the hardware, right? This person has written an article in the context of new regime that is coming up in US, which everybody is worried about what will happen to the world order, what will happen to the scientists, what will happen to the academic world or non-academic world too. So in this context, he has clearly written that unless state funds science, right, there won't be any growth, there won't be any innovation, right? And why say state should fund science is the scientists are the ones who not only generate knowledge, they are the ones, at least in the US system. In Indian system, I'll come to that later, or in most of the developed countries, not only the scientists generate new knowledge, they are also the ones who communicate new knowledge to the students, right? They are the teachers, right? They do both research and teaching. Only in India we have separated for a variety of reasons, some administrativism, some inadvertent reasons too. When it started scaling up as an experiment, can we have some colleges where only some teaching happens, and then over the time the scaling up happened of higher education, and then we have sort of got separated so much that now a teacher would be teaching not having for example, cell biology. You're all biologists, so it would be easier to use this as an example. Many teachers may be teaching cell division or some aspect of cell biology with not having seen a cell under a microscope. Not only that, they have not seen a cell under a microscope, maybe they are also taught by their teachers who also may not have seen a cell under a microscope. In a way, maybe 2 or 3 generations of teachers we have in this country who have not done research and teaching students. In a way, they're transmitting the knowledge verbatim as it is written in the textbook without understanding the concept much. There are exceptions. We all are product of that system. Exceptions are always there in any system. And India being a very large country of 1.2 billion people, these exceptions too may be a large number, right? For example, 33,000 science colleges we are talking about. Even if there is 1,000 good colleges we are talking about, that 1,000 into, let's say, each college has about 10 good teachers. We're already talking about 10,000 good teachers. But 10,000 good teachers is a minuscule compared to what is required in a country where, the gross enrollment ratio right now is 20%. We are aiming for 30%, and which is what seen in most developed countries. It's somewhere between 30 to 40%. So that means what it means is after 12th standard, 30 to 40% of the students enter into higher education. And India is only 18% right now. And world average is 30%. Developed countries slightly more than, something like 40%. So we are below world average. And so if you want to further expand our higher education, more and more private colleges, universities, or government-run colleges and universities have to come up. And where are the teachers? And obviously we'll go on to have more e-learning resources so that we can even completely do away with the teachers. That's even more disastrous, because how do students know how to generate new knowledge? Now, why is it important? Why is it important? Because what is learned in a college or in a school, that content is not so important. It's more like a case study. Finally, what students learn is problem solving ability, analytical skills, right? That's what we use in our day-to-day research. And this research methodology is passed on to the students, and hopefully they will be able to solve any problems of life or any problems of their whichever the profession. What happens if I use this enzyme, right, at this concentration, at using this kind of a buffer, at this temperature? What happens if I add an additional millimolar concentration of magnesium or calcium kind of thing? So we make all kinds of predictions and then come out with an experiment which is ideal, so-called ideal. And we further try and, and many times we simulate. We don't even get into the experiments. Before that, we simulate using in silico methods, or you just simulate in using your, thought experiments, or simulate using a piece of paper before you get on to the real experiments. This is the method we need to teach our students. And hopefully that's what will help them to solve other problems. It could be societal problem, it could be personal problem, it could be their career problems, right? Depending on what kind of a professional career they take up. That is the importance of teachers knowing how to do research. And how do the teachers know how to do research? They themselves have to do research. So some amount of research has to be done in their level. Now, this is where the basic science versus applied science comes, because applied science is much more larger teamwork. You actually requires more funding than basic science. Even if you're talking about, let's say, using some method of science to, purify water, right? IIT Chennai, one of professors has developed a new method of water purification, which thinks that removing arsenic is much easier and faster and much less expensive. But the kind of funding that was required to develop that technology and try to even at a pilot scale testing requires several $1 million of money. So obviously it's very expensive to do applied research. At the end of the day, you may come out with an affordable technology, right? But in the beginning, you need more money. Whereas basic science, it actually don't require so much money, right? With a small amount of money, you can all do that. And as a teacher, if you have to do basic science, obviously you would be doing mostly individual centric labs, or maybe 2 or 3 PhD students, and then a small group doing science. So that helps in not only generating new knowledge, in acquiring the methods of research, which can be now transmitted to a large number of students in the society. Then there are other direct benefit of doing basic science. One is developing the what's called the technical expertise to understand the technology, because modern technology is all much more science based. Earlier days technology, for example, steam engine, agriculture, wheel to agriculture to steam engine, there was no really hard science used to develop that kind of technology, right? Now, the first person who started agriculture, or first set of people who started agriculture, or whoever developed the wheel, whoever developed how to cook rice, I don't think they knew science behind all those things, right? They used trial and error method, or could be serendipitous, or it could be just happened inadvertently in some, and they basically understood the importance of whatever that phenomena and then used it in the society, and that became a technology. But if you look at particularly in the 20th century onwards, much of the technology has the science behind it. First, you understand the science. It could be physics, chemistry, mathematics, or biology, or physics, chemistry, or biology using mathematical tools or other tools, and then you develop technology, or you modify an existing technology, further improvise it. So this kind of science-driven technology development, you require the knowledge of basic science, right? So acquiring the basic science in the ways the basic science is produced is very important. You cannot just start reading Newtonian mechanics and say, okay, now I'll develop a very good car which can run 200 kilometers on Indian roads, or a bullet train at 300 kilometers on Indian rail kind of system, right? Obviously, you need to know how Newton sort of came about with those kind of laws of physics, or Newtonian laws, or what kind of mathematics he used, why he had to use that kind of mathematics to develop his laws and kind of stuff, right? That's one level. The second is, let's say if I want to, let's say government says, why should I fund the thousands of these researchers all over the country? It's becoming expensive. Instead, I can just use the same money and buy some rockets from outside the country, or aircraft, whether for passengers or for the military, or computers, supercomputers, everything I can import, right? Why should I spend money? Now the problem now comes is this within the nationality, where of course it's nothing to do with science, because science doesn't have these boundaries. But now if you have to deal with so-called nationality and national importance kind of things, or security of the nation, in these kind of issues you need to start with, you need to know even the technology, the science behind the technology. You want to negotiate good technology, right? Right? How will you know whether Rafael is better, or the MiGs are better, or the whatever the other ones in US system, I don't know whichever the one, right? These kind of aircraft you should buy, or you should buy a supercomputer from China, or a supercomputer from US, or from Europe, and which technology is better, and what kind of transistors, what kind of very different things you need to look into it when you have to buy something. So obviously you need to have internal competence. You want to buy something from outside world. Now you also have to deploy the technology, right? You need to have a good understanding of the science behind it. You have to understand the technology. Otherwise, for example, in India, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have been able to deploy computers or the mobile technology to the use of the public at such wider scale, and kind of depth it has gone into. Close to about 1 billion people are using now IT related technology in their day-to-day life, right? Poorest of the poor are using it. It's because India had that competency. It's not simply because someone supplied it and then government decided we'll do it. Who is the government? Finally, the government has to run by people. And who are those people? Some of us, right? Whether they may be in the different departments of the government, finally they are all products of our science colleges. Somehow they had some understanding of science because their teachers could teach somehow some amount of science and technology, and they used that knowledge. Even if they didn't have this one, there were enough people in IITs or other engineering colleges or in the universities who could advise them. Even today, for example, every building, every bridge, every flyovers, right? The structural drawings had to be proof checked by an IIT professor. I don't know how many of you know this, right? This is the law, right? Now, if there was no research going on in IITs, right, you wouldn't have enough people even to proofread a structural drawing, and every day there will be one or other building will be collapsing. In a country of ours where the quality of construction is not all that great, if we are still there holding into it because there are some structural drawings, and there are ways of measuring the the load bearing abilities of very different pillars, and every step during construction is all tested. Who is going to test? These are the researchers who are testing it, and they know the physics behind it, they know the engineering behind it, they know the mathematics behind it. They are doing it, right? But they are all not visible, right? So there are so many invisible stories about the importance of basic science in the society, and this is what we need to communicate to the people. We need to communicate to the policymakers, we need to communicate to the administrators, we need to communicate to the general public, right? The advantage of it, people also develop confidence in the society. One of the main problems in India, which is not told many times, we are always gung-ho about everything, whether it is related to our ability, perceived ability in military, or our perceived ability in cricket, or perceived ability in what we can do in Olympics, or in any area. What we don't talk about is there is general confidence levels in the country is very low, right? Typically, we always look forward to some recognition, some achievement, some milestone thing happening outside the world, we typically try to deploy this in this country. To that extent, we are knowledgeable. To that extent, we are competent. The reason our own innovations are not picked up by our own people, it could be government, it could be in industry, or simply is because there's lack of confidence in amongst our people. And this lack of confidence is not because there is no sufficient expertise or sufficient depth in our research or science. It's simply because people don't know it, right? So if we talk about success stories with sufficient solid science behind it, I don't think we should fake our stories, right? Real stories. And hopefully our scientists will become more visible, our science becomes more visible, importance of science in the society becomes more obvious to the people, and then their confidence level also goes up. And when the confidence level goes up, general public will see that, okay, yeah, somehow there will be a way to solve the problems in this country, whether it could be natural disaster or it could be human related disasters like climate change or something, right? And once that confidence level is there, they also become more adventurous, right? Now, for example, if the general insecurity in the population is what causing many of our problems. Why we hoard anything? It's not hoarding is black market. Even ordinary people hoard. If there's a sense that there is a water problem going to be there in the next 1 week, immediately the buckets and buckets and barrels of water is stored at home somehow. Same thing with cash, same thing with food, same thing with simply because we don't trust our system, we don't trust our society, right? Because we think it's not secured enough. That security feeling will also come if they understand the society very well, and if they know that our scientists, technocrats can deliver and they can solve problems, and they themselves can solve problems if they have that knowledge, if they have that skills. And so if that kind of confidence builds up, overall confidence is what is important, for any developed country. The problem of why we violate traffic so much, why we violate the civic sense in this country, is simply because we don't trust ourselves, we don't have so much of confidence. They're all linked. I mean, I'm a system biologist. I keep, there's a friend of ours, we are discussing about, the insect-plant interaction, right? It's not about one insect, one plant. It's just the whole ecosystem interactions. So you need to understand, the complete ecosystem to even to put science in that, ecosystem. So that's the reason why I think, the science communication is so important to build the confidence in the society, so that they think that then they will sort of have the secured feeling that the problems can be solved in this country. Even there is no secured feeling that problems can be solved, that insecurity feeling is what leads to all kinds of erroneous behavior, right? So that's thought, what my thinking is, why it's important to talk about success stories. There may be some failure stories, there are maybe very failures, and all of us have failed, and many scientists have failed, Nobel laureates have failed in their experiments, fine. I mean, that's part of our game, right? For a 10 experiment, one may become successful, and that one successful experiment you may have to fail. It's like venture capital is also. They say 1% is a success rate. Obviously, to pick up that 1%, you have to invest in 100. You can't say how to find that 1%. I mean, it's statistically impossible, right? Mathematically impossible. I'm sure all scientists, know this. So we can have some, interaction session on this. Maybe just to set up the discussion, I can tell you one interesting story which I'm never tired of talking about. The importance of basic science in at least, if I don't say it's solving the problems of the society, at least to make, to enrich the people's life, right? Let's say that, that way. So here's the story. A scientist in Hyderabad, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Dr. Lalji Singh, he has been working on sex determination in snakes. Very esoteric, basic biology question, right? How do the embryos, right, develop into a male snake or a female snake, right? After fertilization, there will be an embryo which can be called as a male embryo or a female embryo, and finally it will end up becoming a male or female snakes, right? And we all know, in generally in human or in many, including snakes or insects, there are chromosomal basis of sex determination. So there is, for example, in human and some insect, it is XX, XY we call. So if two X's are present, one from the mother and one from the father, that egg, now it's called embryo after fertilization, that embryo will become female organism. And if one X that's coming from the mother and the sperm happens to carrying the Y chromosome from the father, then that fertilized embryo will become XY in these two chromosomes, and that XY means it's male. But in snakes, a slightly different mechanism. The heterozygosity of chromosomes is in females and not in males, right? But he wanted to know the molecular basis of this, right? What is there in that W chromosome or Y chromosome that determines the sex of the organism? Y chromosome in mammals and let's say W chromosome in snakes, right? Now, obviously, he started looking at what kind of DNA elements are present, which may be involved in sex determination. During this process, he hit upon a region which is called, basically, he called it as is a repetitive region. You all have minor satellite, or major satellite repetitive. Those are all the old terminology. Post-genomic era, we don't even use this. They're just repetitive sequences, right? So he called it as BKM sequences, branded crate minor sequences. Minor is minor satellite, right? That means it's a fewer repeats rather than hundreds and thousands of repeats like ALU sequences, right? And this repeat sequence was supposed somehow is unique to W chromosome. It's not present in the other chromosome. Now, it turned out to be that it was useful for DNA fingerprinting. You can use this because typically what happens is, all of us know, right? When you look for differences between genus or families, you look for some protein sequences to see differences, because the phylogenetic relationship is easy to establish because protein sequences are slow evolving. But if you want to look at closer organism, you say now sometimes use ribosomal RNA, sometimes use non-coding sequences in the DNA, right? These sequences are ribosomal RNA is medium, they also evolve much slower rate than proteins, maybe essential proteins. Whereas the non-coding sequences, they evolve faster because they can accumulate mutations without affecting the protein function. So that way we can quickly find out the relationship among the closer species. BKM sequences found out to be easier even to distinguish individuals within a species. So much of diversity is there, right? And that's how DNA fingerprinting started in India because of his contribution. I know there are lots of interesting stories how it became so obvious for everybody in the society, and how it's widely people started using in courts and other forensic reasons. And there's one interesting is the basmati export cell of the government of India. They wanted to identify authentic ethnic Indian basmati using DNA fingerprinting, so that you can now sell ethnic basmati rice, because an ethnic basmati rice is more priced than the other basmati which is adulterated or variety of different basmati rices. So this is where he started using this. He means one of his colleagues, someone else in Hyderabad in Center for DNA Fingerprinting and Diagnostic, Professor Nagaraju. And this has now resulted in 30% increase in basmati rice export, right? And so farmers are now, those who are growing in Uttarakhand region, good basmati rice, and they get better price compared to farmers who may grow large amount of basmati rice but not ethnic basmati rice. So that way some farmers are getting definitely good benefit. The other end is government itself, out of tax, it may be is collecting hundreds and crores of rupees every year as tax for an investment of 5 crores. I always say this, no Ambanis and no Birlas or Tatas can give you this kind of dividend, right? 5 crore investment for about 2 years, and you are giving government every year some 500 crore rupees of returns. So this is the success stories, one of the success stories. There are multiples of these things. We have as many success stories as in US or in UK in terms of the number of scientists versus success stories. But we have less success stories because we have less number of scientists per 1,000 population or per million population. So we have 20 times less number of scientists per million population in India compared to UK and USA. We have 10 times less number of scientists per million population compared to China, right? And because but still we have done much better. Number of FRSs in this country is more than per million population in Australia or Canada or to some extent even UK, right? But UK has surpassed because UK is, Royal Society is in UK. Yeah. But considering outside UK people also can get Fellowship of Royal Society, India has many more fold per million population than Australia or Canada, which fund basic science much more than our country, right? Now, the second interesting success story is also that the perspective about why success stories may not be that many or that big from India is critical number, right? This is because of the critical number problem, right? Many times you hit the whatever the target when you cross the threshold level, right? So sometimes it's in biology is very easy to understand. I don't know how to explain in physics or mathematics terms. Let's say in biology, let's say you have all of us carry 2 copies of every gene. We are diploid, right? One copy, if it is completely mutant and null, the other copy can still make enough protein so that you are surviving happily. All of us are heterozygous for one or other gene, right? And heterozygosity is not itself going to lead to any complications. But in the heterozygous background, if you try to manipulate the protein function a little bit, the tipping the threshold level is much easier. You can start getting phenotypes. But at the diploid level, when both copies are normal, that tipping will not happen, right? So typically, whether it is positive side or negative side is easy to deal with in India, right? It's simply because we're somewhere at the subcritical threshold. If you push ourselves above critical level, the success stories can become many-fold more in India. So that's one of the reasons why we need to bring in more scientists to research, right, and basic science. Don't feel shy that what you're doing may not be understandable to others, and what you're doing may be a very small subset of a big question. For example, when I talk about my work, I'm a developmental biologist, right? As a developmental biologist, every developmental biologist, what do they look for? They want to know how from a single cell embryo you get a multicellular organism of with 50 to 100 trillion cells like me, right? Now, is it the question I'm asking? No, actually no. But this is the bigger question in my field, not my question. My question is a very small subset of questions. For example, how organs are specified along the body axis. I'm asking that question, again, no. That's another sub-question of a bigger field. Still it's also a large field. I'm going to go on like this, but finally I say I'm looking at one particular protein which distinguishes between 2 different types of organs in an insect, right? Of course, insect is a model organism, it doesn't matter, right? So, but I don't feel shy saying that the question I'm asking in my lab is how do organisms grow from a single cell to a multicellular complex, individuals, right? I mean, finally, that's the question we are all. As a scientist, I may be contributing to a small bit of it, but as a community of scientists, all of us are asking the same question. It may be have 100 to 120 years of history of embryology, starting from anatomy now to more and more molecular work and imaging. Finally, everybody want to know that one. Same thing. Every neurobiologist can say, my work is interested in understanding how the brain functions, how the brain works. You may be working on some calcium channels or some sodium channels in one neuron or some axonal fluttering of some microtubules and everything, but it doesn't matter. Finally, your field belongs to bigger question in neurobiology, so you can communicate that to our lay people.